So it's finally here, the Racetalk Blueprint. The Racetalk Blueprint is exactly what the title of the project says it is. It's conversations about race with the blueprint we hope will encourage you to do more than just watch. It's an initiative we hope you'll let thrive and take up space in your life so you can also contribute to a much-needed change that needs to happen in society today. These conversations are definitely uncomfortable, raw, and far from black and white, but they have the capacity to heal us through understanding. A bunch of my friends and I got together and we decided to have these uncomfortable conversations turn mini-series, and it kind of turned into something better than we even imagined. It was healing and so foreign and scary, but we made it. So watch us, get encouraged, and download the free Blueprint toolkit we've created just for you to be able to have these same conversations in your circles.
This episode was created with the intent to introduce and familiarize our viewers with who the Blueprint Group is, along with showing what a safe space environment can birth. This episode is presented in the form of a game for the sake of creating an environment adequate and equipped to hold a space, allowing for each to speak, and most importantly, to be heard. Setting the tone encompasses the group at large, delivering a message applicable to our viewers while serving as a conscious awareness each member will consider and take into account when featured in the episodes to come.
Previously on the Racetalk Blueprint.
So the trigger game, even though we have, briefly discussed it, we are going to just explain it a little bit for our viewers. And the trigger game is basically a group of 3 groups that we have set aside, and each group is asked a question, and everyone in that group is basically going to answer the question in the way that it resonates for them.
How come you speak so eloquently?
Does your mom clean houses?
Why is your butt so big?
There you go. All right. Homosexuality is a choice and a sin. So I heard that growing up, born and raised in Nigeria, I heard that so many times. That when I moved to America permanently, I was an ally for LGBTQ, and I thought I was doing this like heroic act, not to really convert anybody, but just to be an ally in my head. My mom she's liberal enough to not perpetuate that, but not knowledgeable enough to really educate us on that world. So it was very confusing when I moved here and I discovered and I became a Christian for myself, and I realized, okay, homosexuality actually isn't a choice. Neither is it a sin, and neither is it for me to put that label on there. But as I've been growing up lately, I hear it a lot in our community. I hear it a lot in the Black community, and it really confuses me immensely how we who have experienced the most oppression and have experienced the most unfairness and inequality in this country cannot how can we oppress the oppressed? How are we so damaged that we have to find someone else to oppress, to make ourselves to find a problem? Does it, what is the root of it? I've really questioned a lot of things. I've also struggled with it to the extent of, just like I expect my white allies or non-people of color allies to stand up in my absence when someone is saying something racist, I would expect everyone around me. It's not just enough for you not to judge, not to be homophobic. You have to be anti, homophobia. And that's something that I've actively put on my heart, just to educate my family, educate my sister, educate people around me, and how to go past someone's sexuality and just see them for their personality. Because you don't hear in the church, oh, can we pray for my son? He's having sexual thoughts about women. But you hear all the time, can we pray for my son? He's gay. Okay, what else is your son? He's not just gay. There are other facets to his individual, and we need to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. And even when you bring in the church, I don't like to talk too much about it, but I am very spiritual. But I feel like that's where I say I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. Because when you're religious and you start reading a book and you start looking at those rules and you go by those rules, to me, I get confused. So I'm like, wait, I thought God loved everybody, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I don't like to say I'm very religious. No, I'm very spiritual. I know who I am and who I love, and I love everybody because that's what my God loves. But I'm not going to sit here and say I'm religious, right? And oppress somebody, especially like you said, feeling oppressed and being oppressed on my everyday life. I would never dare put that on somebody. So I understand that.
I think a lot of it has to do with rigid cultural definitions. And old timers think, if there's a balance that you look for here. And the balance is that old timers, part of their job is to maintain culture, right? Depending on where they're from. So it isn't like everything else in life, nothing is black and white. It's not all one way. But the balance that we're trying to find is for old timers whose job it is to maintain the cultural definitions of what your culture is. So a lot of times they may see things like homosexuality is not in line with what the culture is, but it's the job of people who are younger to explain to them that you can maintain your cultural identity and still have compassion and understanding for things that are different from how you were when you were young. So that's the balance. And I feel like it's not always born out of hatred. It's usually born out of some form of ignorance. But I mean, I think that's how people that are young like us, that's how we help them. When you have, because again, you got to remember, old timers, part of their job is to maintain cultural identity. So we got to help them understand that we can have cultural identity and also have understanding for things that issues that they weren't asked to understand that we now understand. So it's just finding that balance.
Well said, Chief. Yeah, I agree.
All right, Brandon.
All right. My turn. I can speak. So question, what's one thing you heard or said? So this was when I was a kid in elementary school, and wasn't anything, amongst a bunch of things that were said to me, I think this is something that kind of resonated with me in my adulthood. It's backwards, or you can probably see it. You're pretty for a black girl. And there was one other black girl in my class. I went to a private school from K through 8. There's one other black girl in my class, and I was the only black boy, right? And so we kind of had that bond that no one else really understood. To be honest, we didn't really understand either. We gravitated towards one another naturally, just because our parents and our families are so similar. But I remember when I first heard it at the lunch table, some of the white kids said it, and I didn't think too much of it because me being a young kid, it was something that kind of went over my head, and all the other kids were saying this, so I was like, okay, well, I guess that's something that's factual. I guess it's it's normal. But now thinking back on it, it's man, she must have felt so isolated at that one point. And it's taken me, so many years to realize how to be empathetic and understand what she must have felt at that time. And I think what increases the magnitude of it is that so many, if not all black women have felt that at some point in their life. You know what I mean? So it kind of opened up a different, area of my brain to understand people that look like my mom and my sister and my aunts, cousins have had to go through what I saw physically happen, at that young age. You know what I mean? Which I could go back and say something, but at that, of course, at that young age, you don't really know what's, happening, right in front of your eyes. Cause I remember after that, she did feel isolated. She made that awkward laugh. She didn't know how to respond to that. It was an awkward thank you. And yeah, that's it.
I would say, even if it took it one step further, it was you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it was always why can't I just be pretty? Why does it have to be dark skin versus light skin? And I think it really resonated with me once I got to college and I joined a sorority, that we were being put up against each other, even by our respective group that we decided to go down, right? So I'm a Delta, and it was all the dark, the thing was all the dark skinned girls were Deltas, and then all the light skinned, pretty, bougie girls were AKAs. And it was just who came up with this? This is ridiculous. So even up until college, I was still dealing with that.
Yeah. I will say, I think in high school, I would always ask Leah, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about how sick it was when we were younger and we would put our arms together, like, who's lighter? No, I'm a little bit lighter. No, you're lighter. No, I'm lighter. No, today I look lighter. And we would literally do that all the time. And it was sick.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I would come home and tell my mom, I hate my hair, I hate my big lips, I hate my body figure. And there was a boy that came up to me one day and was like, your lips are so big, they have wrinkles. And my mom came up to me and she was just like, people pay for what you have, so stop crying, and when you get older you'll understand. But I didn't want to understand it then. And I just felt so ugly and just so like not wanted. And like we always felt like, okay, like this is just how we are, so let's just bank on like our education and, you know, being boss women, but forget the pretty, that's not for us until a certain age. So
but that also was impacted by our environment, because there weren't many people that looked like us. So all the guys were dating the white girls, you know, they were dating the girls that weren't black, you know, light-skinned girls. If they were dating black girls, like we didn't have boyfriends in high school,
you know.
But yeah.
Question: what would you say to them now, Randall, if you heard that again?
I mean, if I'm gonna keep it PG for the sake of this, but you know, first I would tell them, like, look, man, like that's obviously that's not the way to go about it. Like, although like you want to pay a compliment, she's beautiful regardless, right? And just and period. You don't need to add anything after that. You know what I mean? And then to the best of my ability, I would educate them on why that's harmful. Obviously, separately, it'll be awkward if she's like standing right there. And then I would go to her and be like, you know, look, you know, I'm sorry that you had to go through that and you had to experience that. You know, you're beautiful in your own skin, and that period. Not for a black girl, not for a dark-skinned black girl, not for that. And that's what it is. I think every woman should feel beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, she should be made to feel beautiful. Like, especially black women. It's unfair that they have to go through life a significant part of their adolescence where they don't feel that.
I don't want to decenter the message and the question that was, and so I really, really appreciate you bringing that to the forefront, Randall. My question, though, is I'm curious if you've heard anything like that said to you. I recognize that there's, you know, an experience that we're highlighting here, and I'm curious what your experience is and what you have heard to bring it back even to the question of like what's been asked to you. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's been about the way I speak or my education. You know, the usual is, you know, you're a class act, or you're pretty sharp. You know what I mean? And it's not even that I'm saying anything insanely profound. It's just I'm just speaking basic English. You know what I mean? And that was something, especially in the sports world, now that I say, you guys are going to start to hear it. You'll hear commentators say that Derek Fisher is a class act, or LeBron James is a class act, or a sharp guy. And at the time I was like, oh, appreciate it. But like now looking back at it, it's like, why don't you say that Tom Brady's a sharp guy? Or why don't you say that this guy, you know what I mean? That's usually the brunt of it. Obviously, like, it's not as damaging as, you know, you're pretty for a black girl can be. But it's still things that kind of loom over my head and kind of question my own intelligence. Because sometimes I don't even think that they're being sincere.
Yeah.
It's almost like the assumption is that there's this marriage between like stereotypically ghetto behavior and blackness. And it always bothers me that there's this like unspoken marriage of like being really black means you have to be stereotypically extra ghetto. And like, that's, to me, that's what that always has been, you know? And like, if you're not that, then somehow you're exceptional. But
we don't know what that is. And that's, you know what I mean? That's real. We don't understand what that stereotype is because we don't resonate with that. We weren't raised like that. But yeah, thank you for sharing. Vicky.
Okay, hello. Kind of nervous, but okay. So the question that I got, and then I also asked people that looking back was inappropriate and definitely left some marks on me, at least, is, if you can read that, where are you really from? And so I think I've shared this with all of you that I came here when I was 6 and I didn't speak any English. And so I only spoke Russian. And I was, I guess, fortunate in that my first elementary school, a lot of kids were also immigrants, recent immigrants. And so we all kind of bonded over that, and we would speak Russian to each other, and it wasn't as much of a barrier, I guess. And I got that question a lot from other kids, and I just didn't think much of it because I was like, well, yeah, duh, like I moved here 6 months ago, like that's why you're asking me this question, like, and I can't speak English well, so obviously I'm not from here. But then I moved to West LA and I went to another elementary school, and it was a much more diverse school. There were no Russian kids there. And so I started asking other kids in an effort to make friends with them and to get to know them better, that question. And a lot of people would just tell me, oh, I'm from here, like I'm from LA. And I was like, no, but really, where are you from? Like, do you speak another language or you're, and I was just curious and I was just trying to make friends. But of course, looking back, you know, it's not appropriate and could be perceived in many different ways. And especially I was, you know, I was sharing this with Dee the other day, like, especially if it's maybe somebody with undocumented or something like that. And when you're asking them that question as a white little girl, I mean, that can just sit so wrong and just a million different reasons why. And so beyond that, and so, but of course I didn't know that when I was, you know, 9 years old. But looking back, I definitely do know that. And I think for me, this question a lot is kind of this, as an immigrant, I think some of us can relate to this, like, you have this push and pull of wanting to assimilate and be like everyone else and just like have the same things and speak the same way and fit in. But you also have this pull from your family and this kind of constant reminder of like, we're not really American either, you know? And so I think for me, this question kind of really impacted my identity and how I show up in the world today. And just like in terms of having to reconcile all of those different experiences. And, you know, like there were many moments in my life where I really hated being Russian, and I would get things like, oh, you don't look Russian. I would say, thank you. Or like, you don't have an accent. I would say, thank you. And there's like, you know, like those kinds of things. I was like, oh, good. Like, yes, I look American. I look white. Like, and then, which obviously I do look white, but I mean, but you know, like there was no other like qualifier with that either. And so, but now I think I've learned as I've gotten older that, you know, there's like, that experience is valid too. And that like my culture matters. I'm lucky to speak a different language fluently. All of these things that I hated about myself growing up that made me different, like I've learned to embrace more.
Thank you for sharing. Wait, Alexa, what was that?
She's snapping.
Oh, okay.
Instead of clapping, that's my snap is.
Yeah, no, I get
it. Yeah, it just resonates with me of like, there's so many things that society, especially like American society, like tries to make you hate about yourself so you can assimilate. And it takes growth and time and a lot of stumbling before you realize that, oh, they're telling me this because it's actually special.
Yeah.
Okay, do your parents still have a thick accent?
Kind of. I mean, but they speak fluently. Like they have like a vast vocabulary. Like they speak well, but they definitely have an accent still.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Gordon, you're next. Minute and 30.
Okay. So my statement that, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it says, that's a bad neighborhood. So the backstory with this is I have a lot of family like in the Bay Area, mainly in the city of Oakland, and I would go up to visit there often over summer, and I would hang out with my cousins, and it would be great. I really like loved hanging out in the city. And I remember when I was probably about like maybe 7 or 8 years old, I came back and like to school in LA, and you know, I told them like I was telling my friends like what I was doing like over the summer, and
I said I went to visit my cousins in Oakland, and then I remember one of my friends was like, "Oh, that's a bad neighborhood." And to me, I just, it's a very like simple statement, but to me that kind of always bothered me, because it's like you go to visit a place and you have your own impression of it, and then for someone to say, "Oh, that's bad," like what kind of came up was, what makes this bad? Like, does that mean the people that live in this neighborhood are bad? Why are you insinuating that it's bad? Now, these are all things I'm saying in my head naturally, because like when you're young, you don't really know how to process a lot of these things. But, as I got older, I kind of just feel like we kind of look at neighborhoods, and that's a statement that's said often. And neighborhoods, I feel like they have problems. It's not necessarily a bad neighborhood. They may have certain issues, but it kind of goes into just problems where you're kind of judging a neighborhood, and it can lead to like devaluing of homes and problems with like real estate, where people don't want to invest in communities, and there's a lack of resources, which ultimately keeps bringing this statement up, like this is a bad neighborhood, when that shouldn't be. So so that was the statement that kind of comes to mind. So
do you think a neighborhood is being labeled as bad or dangerous because of the population? So if it's populated by mainly Black people, some people assume like this is a bad neighborhood, it's filled with Black people, or this is a bad neighborhood, it's filled with Hispanics.
yeah, I feel like that statement really kind of resonates more with minority-based neighborhoods, and I just kind of feel like that's unfair, whether it's a Black neighborhood, Hispanic neighborhood, even like recent immigrant neighborhoods. But and it's usually alluded to like crime or different things or violence. But I feel like every neighborhood has problems. Like I've lived in nice neighborhoods, and there is issues where like there was like maybe like a meth house like down the street that blew up that was in a nice neighborhood. So would you label that a bad neighborhood? And so to me, it's just, I feel like it's a very unfair statement, and we kind of need to stray away from that, because it just kind of prevents people exploring neighborhoods that they would just be afraid of. It puts like a fear, and it puts a fear on the people in those neighborhoods. And and I can kind of go on like how it can be even linked to like policing, how certain neighborhoods that are considered bad neighborhoods are policed, and how people are treated, so.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Gordon. It's the same thing with Brooklyn. Growing up in Brooklyn, I'm sure we've heard everything about how terrible Brooklyn was. Biggie Smalls grew up there. It's always, gang related. There are always shootings, etc. But now everybody loves Brooklyn. Everyone wants to go to Park Slope. Everyone wants to go to Williamsburg. But it happens all the time, which is really, really sad, which it devalues the people who live there, devalues the properties, etc. All those things that you just mentioned. But at the end of the day, I'm always optimistic that I know where I was from and where I grew up, and how that shaped my life in a lot of ways. It taught me a lot of life lessons growing up as a child that I am using today. Just one prime example, just being street smart. When you're able to maneuver different cities and states, like they say, if you grew up in New York, if you can live in New York, you can live anywhere. And when I came out here in LA, it was just the same mindset that I had, growing up. The only thing I would disagree is the Oakland Raiders. I mean, that's that team needs help.
It's funny you say that. That's my team, actually. We moved to Vegas, so maybe the neighborhood they changed a different connotation, but I don't know. Grew up an LA Raider fan, though.
I got you.
Andrew, you're next. 1:30. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Quickly, sorry if that's okay, but I'm glad that we're talking about the neighborhood thing really quickly, only because, Andrew, to your point, like if you live in quote unquote a bad neighborhood, like what does that say to the kids? That you are bad kids.
Exactly.
And then it's just it manifests, and it starts, you internalize, and it creates, it's just, you create your reality, right, with what is being labeled.
Absolutely.
So I really do agree, Gordon. We need to really discuss like what this language of bad neighborhood and nice neighborhood does to the population within them.
Andrew, do you want to go next?
Yes, let me keep this short because I know we've been over time. Can you guys see that?
If you were real, buy me a drink. Oof.
That's not like a city girl.
Is that a girl or a dude saying that?
Oof.
Oh man.
I want to hear this story. Like,
I'm so sorry.
it's wild. All right, so we're going back to New York again. So this story is sort of like similar to Brittany's in a way, where I went out with my boys, and everyone's had this moment or this Friday night where you just want to hang out with your friends. Like, you have no agenda. You know, it's been a long week. You've been working all week, and you just want to step out, have a drink, hang out with your peeps, and just like have a good conversation or whatever the case is. And like I said, no agenda. We weren't trying to pick up girls. Like, we weren't trying to do anything whatsoever. So we went there, and I was just kind of just reflecting on my week or whatever. I was at the bar, just ordered myself some drink. And a girl just walks up, and this is a random situation where she just literally looks at me and just says, "If you're a real nigga, you buy me a drink." Yeah, exactly. Just quiet, awkward. You don't even know what to say. How do you react to that? This is a white girl from New York as well, from Manhattan. And I didn't know what to say. My boys were around me a little bit, so they overheard that. So the reaction initially was, I kind of turned around like, is she talking to me? Like, who's she talking to? You know, I didn't understand that. So then it went from that to being upset. I got upset really quickly, sort of like Brittany did. And after that, I'm just like thinking to myself, this is just ignorance. Don't respond to it. Don't say anything. Just let her be. You know what I mean? But at the same time, one of my boys who's extremely outspoken just kind of just chimed in and just said, you know what, let's dismiss this. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead and hang out with your girlfriends. You know what I mean? We're just trying to have a good, guys' time here, and that was extremely disrespectful what you said. But he kind of just stepped in and literally said everything that I was thinking about, but I couldn't bring myself to say, which is really strange because I'm very outspoken when it comes to things like that. But it was the first time in my life that someone has ever called me that name. And it just so happened to be in New York, of all places, where you just feel like, I mean, we're so diverse, and, things like that should never happen in New York. At least that's what I felt like. So it was just very interesting. And I hope I didn't go over time, but I just wanted to just share that with you guys really quickly. But sometimes I think about it again and I'm just like, wow, like, I have so many responses today that I can absolutely say to her, in terms of educating her, and then just wanting to show people that this is not good. This is not a good way to behave. You know what I mean? You can't talk to people like that. You cannot articulate things like that to someone thinking that it's okay, And I can understand if this girl was completely wasted, but she was very, very sober, but it says a lot about her than it says about me. So
yeah,
interesting.
Sure.
I don't know what to say when after the fact, right? Like when you leave and it's always like, damn, I could have said this, right? And that's always the case.
Yeah.
Two things that actually jumped out to me while you were saying that is, like, the first thing is obviously she was very comfortable to use the word, nigger.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is her warped idea of what masculinity should be, right? In the expectation that, hey, look at me, I'm just making it up. I'm a hot, white girl in Manhattan. So it's your job to buy me a drink, right? So I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah. It is. And then it's so funny you mentioned that, Olu, because that's what I started thinking about now in my older age, right?
Yeah.
Well, because you felt I'm a guy, and, you are a good looking woman. You felt that comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, the audacity in that, is mind blowing to me. Because I would never, I mean, the way I carry myself, I would never speak to anyone in any form of disrespect whatsoever. And I always watch each and everything that I say to another individual or to another human, because at the end of the day, I don't want that reflected back on me, you know what I mean, in a negative light. So the audacity in that, I was just wondering, wow, how did this girl grow up this way where she felt this comfortable to walk up to a complete stranger, by the way, and utter these words and felt comfortable saying, I mean, she said the words like,
it was comfortable.
It was too comfortable. I don't know another good word to like really use to explain how comfortable she felt. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, if she had like a kickback chair, she would have put her feet up and just, you know, with a little martini and just be about me a drink, nigga. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she would have done that. And that is the craziest part to me, that when I started thinking about that again at my older age, I'm like, wow, it takes a lot of confidence to be able to do that. You know, and it's really, really sad. And I wish I can talk to her right now. I wish I can talk to her today. And that's the mindset that I have now. I'm always saying, if I run into this girl again, you know what I mean? I don't know if she's married or have kids, or hopefully she's learned or educated herself. Yeah, I'm hoping so. I really am. I really am.
Andrew, what would you say?
I would educate her. I would educate her on race relations. I would educate her on addressing people who you do not know, strangers completely, and then the cultural divide that we have, the cultural line that you cannot cross. You know what I mean? It's an imaginary line, but I feel like we need to start painting it so people can see it clearly. You cannot cross this line. You know what I mean? That is disrespectful. That is not right. And you do not have the audacity to say that to someone like myself, because I would not turn around and say something like that to you. One, being a female, second, being a Caucasian female. I would never say that. So, I mean, I would have so much more to say, obviously, if I saw her face to face, because the emotions are there. And it would just basically spill out, just sort of like a rainforest, you know what I mean? It would just come out, you know, as I'm talking to her. So, yeah, that one definitely cut deep, because, you know, being from Brooklyn, I just never had that in my life before. And it was an interesting moment in my life.
And to close that on that, when you said she had a lot of confidence, like that's the type of confidence no one should ever want. Like, humble yourself.
Yes.
Because when you get too confident, that's cocky and that's arrogant, and you start saying things and like it's your world and it's not. So I hope she readjusts her confidence level.
Definitely more arrogance.
Yeah.
So my question or my comment was, I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but you don't belong in university. The solution is for you to drop out and pursue something else, like another university or a job. So a college professor told me that. It was my senior year. And just remember having Scantrons and your test. Don't write on your test, right? I was the type of person, I had to do like the cancel for every multiple choice. So I would, you know, okay, it's not this one, it's not that one. And basically I forgot to erase my own marks on my test, turned in my Scantron, had my test on it. And I got this email from my professor who basically gave me 5 solutions and said, instead of taking off points from your quiz, you will be warned not to do this again. And I don't know the explanation for this, but here are the possibilities that come to mind. 1, you could do better, but you are not because you don't apply yourself. The solution is to buckle down and take this seriously. In other words, grow up. 2, you are trying, but you need help. The solution is for you to seek help. 3, you don't belong in this course. The solution is for you to drop the course. 4, you don't belong in your university. The solution is for you to drop out and pursue something else, like another university or a job. 5, I'm sure there are other explanations or combinations of explanations. Be honest with yourself and you will be the best judge. I hope the explanation is number 1 or 2. These can be fixed with some hard work.
All because you wrote the answers on the paper as well as on the Scantron?
This is an email from my professor that I will forever keep. That right there, I didn't know how to process it. So I was walking to class and my next teacher, it was an English class, and she was a Black female. And I showed her my laptop and I said, am I wrong for feeling the way I feel right now, I can't put into words, but like I kind of want to cry. And I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it. But she looked at it and she was pissed and furious. And till this day, I cannot understand why a professor would tell me that. I had been taking 7 classes. I was trying to graduate on time because I had skipped one of my classes I was supposed to take a semester before. So it was a lot. And I had a B in that class, by the way. And to have a professor tell me that, I didn't want to even be in school because I really questioned, like, wait, if a professor can tell me this and he's supposed to guide me in my career or what I'm supposed to do after this to be a better person, how do I then, go into the world knowing that people feel like this and you're supposed to teach me? You're supposed to make me a better woman. But I realized in that day, I could recollect when my father told me when I was younger, like, you see this color? It will never work for you. You will never win. You will never be number one. So today I am always showing up with my full self and then some every single day when I go to work, when I am doing my projects, whatever it is, because I refuse to let anybody tell me that and feel like they are okay with saying that. And that was just like as little as a scantron and writing on a test. So that was mine.
Wow.
Yeah.
If I was gonna say, like, if you can, did you ever confront the professor about the email, or if you didn't, like, what would you probably say? Like, knowing, like, because I mean, hearing that email, it just sounds like
not real.
It's definitely like an insult, like, but he wrapped it in like with like 2 options and tried to make it sound like, as nice as possible, like in an academic setting. But I don't know. I just see like an insult is an insult. But how did you ever confront him about that email, or what would you say to him if you?
And he was a tenure professor, so he couldn't, be fired. He didn't apologize, and I walked my butt into that class every week, twice a week, and took every quiz, erased every marker on there, and he never looked me in the eye. I never looked him in the eye. And I just kept it pushing. But I knew that I was like, when I become somebody, when I'm older, I'm going to dedicate my success partly to him because he fueled me, because I'm not going to let him feel like he won that over, or how many other people he's told that to in the past. So, yeah, I take little pieces like that, and that's what fuels me to just be my best self, or show up my best self, at least, I feel like. But yeah, if I saw him today, I wouldn't keep it classy, to be honest with you. I still have that anger.
What would have been the pro? What would have worked for you then if you would have confronted him?
So I don't believe that you can have a talent of teaching or being smart and still have the audacity to say that to a child. So if you don't have empathy and the knowledge, you're written off of my book, personally. So I would like for him to get fired. I know that's not possible. So, but yeah, we're done with my moment.
We're at a different time, Dee. So if you were to post that on social and tag the university, I think it would be very, very different for him.
It would be different, but like that's energy and peace that like I feel like I'm just taking away from myself. Like I can't spend that energy because talking about it now, I feel what I felt then, and I don't need to feel like that. I don't want to.
Totally. I just hope he's not doing that to someone else. Yeah. And with the audacity that he had to send you an email, like that you can print and forward.
I sent it to my personal email. I'm like, I'm gonna keep this forever.
Paper trail.
Yeah. Group 3 is, what is one word or phrase you recalled or associated with growing up? Let's keep it under 1:30.
On the pen and paper.
Awesome.
So, can you see it? Because I know the lighting is kind of crazy. I usually don't like to relive this story, but I think this is the most appropriate setting to talk about this. So my phrase is get a job, nigger. A couple summers ago, I live in Philly. So a couple summers ago, I was just chilling on the porch with my cousin at like 2 a.m, and a tow truck came into her neighborhood and started to tow her neighbor's car. And I went, across the street just to knock on her neighbor's door to let her know, like, you're not gonna have a car in the morning. And by the end of the guy, finishing his tow, as I was crossing the street, he sped up with his tow truck trying to hit me. And I turned around and I was like, "Are you about to hit me?" He just was like, "Get a job." Or no, he said, "Imagine if you put that much energy into getting a job," basically insinuating like, because I'm Black, I don't have a job. And like, he just was so extra. And, I was like, just went off like, no, like I keep jobs on top of jobs, like, no. And he, just was like, "Get a job, nigger, F you, nigger," just cussing, driving down the street. So it was just crazy. It was very cowardly of him, one, to be doing that at like 2 a.m, coming through my neighborhood, taking somebody's car without letting them know. And, to address me that way, if it was daytime when all the brothers is on the block, he would not even do that. But because I'm a woman, he felt compelled to just, take advantage of that moment. So yeah, it was hard. It was hard. That was a hard moment to experience.
Thank you for sharing that. That makes me mad. Like, I feel like I just lived that, but I can only imagine how you feel and felt at that time. How are you coping today? How often do you think about that?
I think about it from time to time. It just, it's upsetting that because of how you look, someone can think whatever they want about you. I'm naturally a confident person. Like, how I feel about myself is solid, but the world around me, like that is a challenge every day to just, I think we had talked about it before, like having to go through that mental check every morning of like, rebuilding your confidence and your understanding of yourself before you step out into this world, because everybody, racism is so prevalent that people, and it's allowed, that people really make up in their minds what they want to think about you without even knowing you. So, I guess just coping in a way where you just have to understand that something could happen. And at the same time, I think I'm just like growing and not allowing it to really, really hurt me or, bring me down. So yeah, it's a challenge.
I'm curious, Brittany, when you heard that, because to the best of my knowledge, like I've never heard something so like bluntly put. Like I've never, that I recall. Maybe I did and just blocked it out, but as best as I can recall, I've never been called that word out, in public. And so I'm curious, it's when you put it in front of the screen, it looks freaking rough. And in that moment, did it have that kind of visceral, like sharp, like, how you think it would? Did it feel as...
Yeah. I grew up in SoCal. So like the type of racism I heard the pretty for a Black girl, or, they, what's up, my nigga, trying to be cool. I heard that type of racism. But like to come to the East where it's blatantly like, it's very segregated out here in Philly, and, it's just, it's real. Like, this is 2020, but racism is very, very real, like, I think when you grow up in the South, you become more, it more because it's in your face. But when you grow up in SoCal or in certain parts of the East Coast where it's more diverse, you aren't exposed to it. So yeah, it enraged me. I was ready to rock, And I think the craziest part was when I called the cops, they basically were like, "We can't do anything for you." So that was the most hurtful part, knowing that I was not protected. I was like, dang, like this man just damn near assaulted me, in the form of a hate crime. And there was no resolution. There was no care, no like, "Oh, we're gonna do everything we can." It was just, are you okay? Did you really get hit? All right.
Or what's the name of the company? Let's call them. None of that. Yeah.
None of that. Yeah. So.
I love you and thank you for sharing that, because I know that could not have been easy. And thank you for reliving it, just to share your story. And it's only a testimony of how great and wonderful and, powerful you are and are becoming as well. So thank you, girl. I love you.
Tony? All right, I'll go. See if we can. Yeah, you were so white. God, that hearing that at such a young age, that threw me for a loop. Literally dealt with like identity crisis as a young kid. You know, I've explained before. My adopted parents are white, so I lived partially in a white household. I also spent some time with my birth family. But when I just remember hearing that, and God, I don't know, it just created such a conflicting feeling in me. Because I knew I wasn't white, I was black, extremely black. I've obviously felt that I was a variation, black, but a variation, which, attributed to like my individuality. But I think what it did that I didn't realize until I got a little bit older is saying the way it was put is, you're so white, this is good. You're good, so that means that being black or not white is not good. And that's something that, had a ripple effect in my relationships, one with my birth family, but then in my personal relationships and through elementary school, middle school, high school, what was good, what wasn't good, who was good, who was not good. And yeah, I would try to hide, I guess, what people would call my whiteness, which was speaking clearly, the type of music I like listening to, the type of clothes that I cared to wear or buy. And so that would always, it just would show up in pretty disruptive ways, which all would prevent me from kind of standing on my square, as Chu was putting. All kind of deterred me or discouraged me from being unapologetically myself, which is me choosing what I want to wear, what I want to watch, what I want to eat, how I speak. And so, yeah, and at 33, I'm still very much healing and growing through, those type of experiences growing up. So, yeah.
It almost makes you feel like you're caught in the middle, right?
Yes, super in the middle. I'm just trying to be me. That's all I'm trying to do. It's not white, it's not black, it's just Tony. That's it. Yeah.
Does it hurt more if it came from a white person or a black person telling you that? Like,
great question. Really good question. For different reasons, it just hurt. Yeah. I think the pain equally is different coming from a white person. Then, it definitely hurt coming from, people who share the same skin color as me, or, people of color, but it still hurt regardless to hear it. Because now I'm thinking of, okay, why is that white? Okay, do I really like that? Do I really want to be? So, it's equally as disruptive. Yeah.
I don't mean this question to sound like ignorant or anything, but this thought just came to mind. Did you ever feel biracial?
No, I felt black.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm
extremely black.
Yeah, extremely. Yeah.
Yep.
I just feel black.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to know.
No. That's completely.
That's not a bad question. That's a good
Yeah.
question.
No. That is a very that's a really neat question that you asked. But no, I didn't. And so yeah, but I mean that conviction and like, no, I'm black. Well, I'm like, well, they're telling me I'm kind of white. So what is that like? So.
Okay. One more question.
Please.
If you were now to adopt a child,
Mm-hmm.
would you adopt black? Would you adopt white? Would it matter?
Great question. That's a great question, and I don't know that I necessarily have an answer, a definitive answer. Mainly because I'm not at a point in my life where I should be taking care of kids, but I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I would be equally as open, but being as, I'm steadily trying to heal that young Black kid who is myself. I feel like I may be a little more sensitive to adopting, a young Black kid. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tony, that's deep.
Thank you for your too. Okay, so Chu, last one.
Always last. Can you guys read that? It looks backwards to me. It says Ungawa. Ungawa. Now that word, when I was thinking like ninth grade, a dude that I went to school with would always call me Ungawa. And I mean, obviously my full name, first name is Chikuma, and it's a Nigerian name. And so obviously, not having a name that's not American sounding name, it really always stood out. So, it was the joke that he would like to play just to kind of like emphasize how African I was, right, or how African my name was. So he'd be like, oh, Ungawa. But the term came from, I think, the 1970s with the Black Panther movement, where there was a saying, it was called Ungawa Black Power. So it was the same people would say, but it was synonymous with things that were African, right? So homeboy would always call me Ungawa just to be like, it was, I don't know if he meant it necessarily as like a hard diss, but it was just his way of kind of making fun of my Africanness. And this is a Black dude who would do it, right? So he would always be like, oh, shut up, Ungawa. Or like, he would just call me Ungawa. And like, in a way, I could see how he thought it was funny, but for me, it wasn't really so much like, at first I was kind of indifferent to it because I didn't really fully understand the history of the term at the time. Like, but after I started getting called it by him, I kind of would, found out what it meant. And so it didn't really bother me so much. Like, it wasn't as offensive as somebody calling me the N-word or something like that. But for me, it was kind of more like, it just seemed to be like a, an othering where he was like, okay, a reminder that you're not American, you're African, And so I always, it definitely would make you, it would make you kind of question your, how much you belong, in that way. And so, I definitely, I wouldn't say that I took it necessarily as like offense more. So it kind of made me, like I said earlier, kind of like knocks you off your square where you kind of feel that you're different from everybody else, but I didn't necessarily think of it as something that was like a hateful thing, but it definitely still made me feel strange because it made me question how much I fit in with everybody else, so that's an experience with that. And obviously I've dealt with a lot of the other ones that everybody has as well, but I picked that one just because I think it was a different spin. I kind of trying to explain the way people's comments or statements to you can make you feel outside, of what is the norm.
Yeah. It is tough being a first generation growing up in America, though.
Yeah.
You have to delegate like at home, like going to school and where, to your roots, but like it's not really accepted at school or your social circles. So that's a tough thing to have to navigate through.
No doubt.
Thank you for sharing.
So.
Thank you. And since this is episode 1 and the main goal for episode 1 is to have that image of what the blueprint looks like, all of us together, because it will be the only time. We do have a message that will be put across, which is the solution list of what we feel like is our brick and pavement unpaved road when it comes to setting the tone. So we will show that in a list to our viewers, but the format for every episode is talk about the topic, our experiences, have our breather moment led by Shay, and then we will talk about our solution. But since we're not talking about our solution in episode 1, I wanted to give the rest of the floor to Shay to explain, what it means to have a breather moment and just have one today, because today was, it was a lot, for me at least, and I'm just thankful. So Shay, if you want to.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I mean, whenever that moment came at whenever we were first meeting, it was really just something I felt like, I was sensing was needed, and just regrounding and back into ourselves after potentially reliving traumatic experiences. I think it's fair to name it that, regardless of how big or small, or how it compares to another person in this space. I think that it's important to acknowledge and validate each story and experience that happened. And so this moment is an opportunity to just come back into ourselves, come back into the present, and feel back into what we know to be true and not these things that potentially, again, we might have relived. So with that, I want to suggest and offer, we take some deep breaths, take them at your own pace. I don't want to dictate it too much, but take 3 deep breaths, and really focus on the inhalation and exhalation, whether it be through your nose or through your mouth. Pay attention to how the breath is coming. Is it flowing into your chest? Is it into your stomach, somewhere in the middle? And just, you don't have to think too hard about it. And just feel it. Feel yourself. Feel that blessing that is a breath, right? I'm going to read a passage, and you're welcome to stay in this space, however that may look for you, while you're still focusing on your breathing, or maybe the slight music you might hear behind me, called Blessings of Our Ancestors, Our Praying Grandmothers by Deja Baptiste, a local Black activist and creator here in Seattle. You are not alone. You are not the first or the only. There is a lineage you are inheriting. It is your courage, your faith, your spirit that sets you apart. We are not doomed. We are not cursed. We are the blessed ones, the blessing. We are blessed to know our spirits are not only bound in our skin, flesh, that bodies, like names, are expressions, manifesting the soul we bear outside of time and beyond infinity. There is a lineage here. You were never the first time. Your family, your hometown, your faith, your lovers loved and were loved by us, the blessed ones. We heard and nurtured our ancestors' dreams and came forward to create and dream. Imagine and plant, live in the physical, what is celebrated and cherished and renewed in the spiritual. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It is very clear, I think, to see that you guys are all just amazing in your own beings, and that I can call all of you friend, family, and I just want us to continue to heal each other through this, and hopefully we can heal other people. So thank you for the first episode of the Racetalk Blueprint.
Did it.
We did it. Now we're done, and now it's easy moving.
Shay, can you send me that poem, that excerpt?
Yeah. I'll send a picture of it in the group chat.
Okay.
It just stuck out, and it felt really relevant and appropriate for our time together and and what I think we're building.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That was great. That was fantastic. I want to share something with you guys really quickly, just in terms of what Shay was just talking about.
Dip, because we're done with filming.
Yeah, this is it. But it's just, I just wanted to say, there's a quote that I hear all the time from one of my favorite actors, and I like to repeat this to like younger actors as well, is you will never see a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? You can't take it with you. When we're done on this earth, everything that we have learned, we should share, with each other. Shay, I appreciate you so much. for sharing that. It might sound very pretentious me saying this, but literally that was very powerful. You did it the first time we recorded as well, just having everyone breathe. Sometimes we forget to take that breath, which is extremely important. You know, even just me doing this breathing exercise right now, I was able to just really just release a lot of, you know, tension, whatever it was, hurt, you know, I'm hurt, even just that little story that I told you guys, you know, had me reliving that again in that moment, you know. So just that breathing exercise that we just did right now was just very powerful. But yeah, you guys just remember that quote: you would never see a U-Haul behind a hearse, so you can't take it with you. The Egyptians tried it. They want to get buried with their gold. All they did was get robbed, basically. So always share, always educate, you know, always encourage. Shay, I appreciate you very much. You should know that, okay?
I love you guys so much.
Stop it.
Well, thanks, guys. I am excited to start working on this episode and get into the next one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Didi.